Today I'm going to show you how I did this hand-painted spooky night sky tumbler. I was really nervous to do it because I'm really not much of a painter, but it was actually so much easier than I thought it was going to be, and it turned out really, really nice. I'm going to walk you through all of the steps to make this tumbler, and then I'm going to show you how to make it with the matte finish. You could keep it shiny, but I think there's something a little bit extra about having a matte finish for this spooky night sky. And I went with the gray and the blue and the black because I really wanted it to be more realistic, like more realistically spooky. So I wanted to stay with these dark tones and keep it more realistic. Let me know in the comments if you prefer a more realistic spooky sky or you actually prefer some of those like purple and pink styles that are also really, really pretty. Leave me a comment because I'd love to know which way you prefer. Let's go ahead and get started. As always, start with a prepped cup and base coat it. I am using the Universal Black for this base coat, and I just did 2 coats of that to get my stainless steel covered. And then you want to gather your paints. For this, I used the Flippin' Awesome paints from the CrystaLac Company in Midnight Blue. This blue one is Midnight Blue. Make sure you shake it up before you use it. I'm using Slate Gray, and then I'm going to use also the Universal Black. I like to transfer them into little containers. These are just little condiment cups. And I'm going to use a blush brush to do my ombre. I recommend either these brushes from the CrystaLac Company or the brushes from the Dollar Tree work really well. Also, I started with the Universal Black and then I went in with the Midnight Blue. Now, the process for doing an ombre with the Flippin' Awesome paints is that you're basically going to start with one color and then switch off between the two to get them to blend. These blush brushes really do lend the blending process to be a little bit easier. And the more brushes you have available, the better, because you may need to do a few different coats of the different colors, and sometimes you need to kind of go in with a new brush so you don't get too much of one color in that blending area. So then I went in with this Slate Gray towards the bottom, and I'm going to blend that in with the Midnight Blue. Again, I'm switching between brushes because when I dip my brush into into that Midnight Blue, I want it to either be the brush I used for the blue or I want a new brush. So I'm going to go in and just keep playing with this until I get a blend that I like. It will dry like 2 shades darker. So if you're working on your tumbler and it's starting to dry, it looks a little bit weird, but it always looks good after it is fully dry. So I just kept going in with the paints and in with the brushes to get those to blend. I decided to go in with a little bit more black on the bottom because, again, this is supposed to be a night sky, and I thought that slate gray was a little too light gray, but mixed with the black, it is actually really, really, really fun. So you can let this dry for 4 hours, and then you can do a second coat. You can see the streaks of it starting to dry because it does dry like a different color, a little bit more chalky, especially that Universal Black. So then I decided that this blue color wasn't quite dark enough. The Midnight Blue wasn't quite as dark as I wanted, so I decided to mix a little bit of black into it so I could get a little bit, just a different shade. It's still going to be blue, but it's going to be a little bit darker, and it's going to bring out a little bit of the gray, and it really just brought this tumbler together. As I was doing this on a live stream, if you want to see me do this in real time, I will link that live stream. However, it was just a little bit too bright, so I went in, grabbed a popsicle sticks, and just mixed up a teeny tiny bit. I knew that I didn't need a lot. So then I just kind of went in with a second coat. I started with the black around the top, and you can see I'm actually moved to a paintbrush because that's all I had, but normally I would use that blush brush like I said in the beginning. So for my second coat, remember, let your first coat dry for 4 hours, and then go in with your second coat. You can see that blue is a little bit more grayish, blackish, darker blue, and it just looks way, way better. So I went in with that and then did my blending all over again. And I'm just switching between brushes to try to get the blend right. And if you're struggling with that blend, it really just takes practice. There's not much else I can tell you, is that you have to practice painting, but don't be scared because I'm not a painter. I'm not that good, but I do it enough where I can make a tumbler that I am proud of. So then I went in with the slate gray to blend with that blue mix and the black on the bottom. And after that second coat, it really all started coming together, and it is sort of like a trust the process. You really you don't want to overwork it. Less is more. But do your best, and remember that like something like a night sky or something in nature, it is not supposed to be perfect. Nature is not perfect. So I just went in having a few streaks, having some imperfect paint areas is normal, right? It's supposed to be that way. Nothing is perfect in the real world. So I went in and just kept blending these until I liked it. And then I let this dry only for about 10 or 15 minutes before I went in to make the moon. You can see some of it's shiny, some of it's not. And I'm using the universal white from the CrystaLac Company to make this moon. And the reason why I recommend only letting it dry for about 10 or 15 minutes is that because the cool part about this is that the paint wasn't fully dry, so it sort of blended with the white that I'm about to paint on, and it gave it some extra texture. You can see it pulling up some of the black and some of the gray and the blue, and instead of like having to focus on adding layers and dimension to this moon, it just did it by itself, and it was so easy. So I didn't, let it fully dry. I just let it dry about 15 minutes, and then went in with just a regular paintbrush, and it just made a really, really nice, realistic looking moon. And I sort of, was, direct and intentional with my brush to make that, a nice circle, but also have the brush strokes inside the moon going in a certain, direction. So then you're going to let this dry as well. Because I was on a live stream, I did it right away, but I did my first coat of my details right away. And I'm just using a very small paintbrush to I made a tree with some branches, and you just got to try your best. It can help to pull up a picture on your computer or on your phone, while you're painting to give yourself a visual. But I did my first coat of these details, and I let this dry for 4 hours. I knew that I wanted to make this a little bit bigger, but I was really just making a footprint at this point, and I knew that I was going to add a second coat and add more details. So I am using the universal black. I think I forgot to mention that. I'm using the universal black, and I'm going to do a second coat. I actually went to a thinner paintbrush. It's like the smallest paintbrush you can find, and I'm just going to go over these details of the tree that I started. I'm doing a bunch of different branches, and I wanted to take it over the moon because it just looks really, really cool. So I didn't like the original shape I did of my tree. It just really honestly wasn't great. So on this second coat, I was able to add a few more details, kind of change the size of it, and really bring it to something that I liked. It's important to remember that you can always build on what you had before. If it is not perfect the first time, just about everything is fixable. You can see me like totally changing the tree trunk here, and I'm gonna still go in even a little bit more to just add a ton of details and just use what I started with as a base, but really go a lot further and add more detail on this second coat. There are a ton of different details you can add. I did the most focal point for my tumbler was the moon and this spooky tree. I was thinking of all the different ways I could add different elements, so I went with these birds that also kind of look like bats, but in my mind they were birds, just kind of like that V-style bird that we learned like in elementary school. And you can make them different sizes, so it looks like some are closer and some are farther, or just bigger and smaller, but it just is a fun little way to add some elements to your tumbler. Once this was dry, I let that second coat dry for 4 hours. Remember, the CrystaLac paints need 4 hours to dry. I went in with my grand finale, and this is the gloss grand finale. And I'm gonna do 3 coats of the gloss, letting each coat dry for 2 hours. Remember that even with a matte finish, you want to start with the gloss. So you can see that the finish is super glossy, and I'm going to use the Grand Finale in the matte version. You can buy both versions to make this tumbler. The application process is the same. You're going to keep your coats thin and get it nice and covered quickly. Try not to overwork it, and let this dry for 2 hours. You are gonna want a couple of coats of the matte finish, whether that's 2 coats or 3 coats, it really depends on how it looks, but you can see that once it starts to dry, it looks matte very quickly. You can see that there are a few spots on this tumbler that are a little shiny, so you wanna make sure that on your second coat, you get nice, good coverage, and it will all, if it looks partly shiny, partly matte, it's probably because you missed a spot. So do 2 coats of the matte finish, letting each coat dry for 2 hours. This hand-painted tumbler really didn't take me very long. The original painted tumbler took me about an hour, and then I did a second coat of the details, and then like a 2 days worth of Grand Finale. If you want to learn more about making tumblers with the Grand Finale, I have an entire video up on your screen that breaks down everything that you need to know about using it for your tumblers so you can use it safely inside your home.